911, what is your emergency?
We need an ambulance. Been a gun discharged.
Was someone shot?
Yes.
Is he awake and breathing?
He just went unconscious. Sabrina, that ain't helping me. You gotta breathe.
On the 28th of May, 2018, Sabrina Hendley fatally shot her husband Mark after an altercation during a pool party. Both Mark and Sabrina had been drinking and started arguing after Mark had abused her in multiple different ways. Mark had even gone inside to retrieve a hunting knife that he held up to her throat and threatened her with.
She was getting mad because he wouldn't let it go. She was like, leave me alone, and he kept on just pushing her in the pool, dragging her around, like, trying to start a fight. And she was like, leave me alone. I'm like, dude, leave her alone.
Later, Mark and Sabrina's father, Mike, got into another argument that resulted in Mike being pushed to the floor, punched, and choked. Mark left to grab a handgun, and Mike called the police. In Mark's bedroom, Sabrina noticed not only the hunting knife from before, but a pistol, holster, and a loaded magazine lying on the bed. Sabrina then picked up the gun and shot Mark once in the back. Just minutes later, police arrived to apprehend her, and the interrogation began later that night.
I just want to know if my husband's okay.
And we'll get through that. We don't quite have that answer yet, so once we hopefully finish up, we'll have an answer for you, okay?
Sabrina is brought into the interrogation room just hours after the incident took place. She's obviously still intoxicated and just wants to know if her husband is all right. The officers explicitly told her they are unaware of his condition, but will find out later. This, however, was a total lie, as Mark Hendley had already been pronounced dead at this time.
If we tell her, right now that her husband is deceased, that she's going to become emotional, and they're trying to investigate and gather facts, and they didn't want to do that.
So despite Sabrina's drunk and traumatized condition, the officers continued the interrogation.
We were talking, and you said that it's been a few hours since you had a few drinks. You and a friend and your husband had drank.
Yes.
A bottle of vodka. Kind of take me through your day today. What were you?
It's Friday. We just got back from a cruise.
You got back today?
Yeah, we were both kind of sick on. We got back and we were just kind of chilling around the house. And then my friend came over and she wanted to stay and drink. And
Who was at your house with you? Who's your friend?
my friend Laura came over.
Sabrina lets the officers know how her day started and essentially details that it was nothing out of the ordinary. The couple had just got back from a cruise and their friend Laura had come over to stay and drink with them by the pool. But as the detectives press further, Sabrina starts to let them in on the reality of their relationship and the first of many oddities surrounding this case.
What happens from there? Everyone's having a good time?
That I've been hit in the head so many times that I don't remember things.
When were you hit in the head?
Oh, car accidents, whatnot. Almost died here recently. But I don't know. It was a good night. I thought it was a good night. I was joking around with my husband. Just about things you're gonna do with your husband.
Sabrina is obviously distraught and is finding it difficult to talk about Mark in a negative light, but it's apparent that she has had some issues with him in the past. The random arguments and horseplay that night are all evidence that Mark was indeed prone to anger issues, and Sabrina's hesitance to talk about it possibly hints towards some form of ongoing abuse. Many people trapped in abusive relationships are unwilling or unable to report the problems due to either feeling threatened or as though it's them in the wrong, not the abuser. This is possibly what's going on between Sabrina and Mark, as the notion of getting mad at everything is a very common one in situations of abuse.
Have you guys fought with each other before physically?
Yeah.
When was the last time?
We've argued quite a few times.
I'm not talking about arguing. I'm talking about have you guys ever got into a boxing match with each other?
Yeah, but my husband just did a leg sweep and knocked my head to the concrete.
When was that?
A couple of years, 2 years ago.
Police involved?
No, I just went to the VA and told him I fell down.
Has there been any type of police involvement in any of the domestic issues
No.
between you and your husband?
No, that there should have been, but no.
Once again, Sabrina describes all the issues she's had with Mark over their 4 years of marriage, all of which point to an abusive relationship. But as mentioned before, she never contacted police or filed a report, a vital piece of information that detectives will use against her in the future. But for now, the topic is shifted to the events of that night. Once everybody has gone inside, Sabrina overheard Mark and her father having an argument, and after hearing Mark push him, went to investigate and try to cool things down.
So is that the point that you start telling him that you want him to be nicer to your dad?
Yeah, we've been drinking. Apologize. He'll understand that you're just being an ass. My dad knows your ass. He already hates your guts, so it's not a big deal. Just say, I'm sorry.
And what was he saying? Your husband?
Oh, just that there's no reason to apologize because my dad will never forgive him. And they crossed a point that they'll never be able to get back from.
How far away are you guys at this point from each other? Are you touching each other, or are you standing on?
At that point, we were touching each other. I was trying to hold him anyway.
So you don't have the gun in your hand at that time?
No, I was holding my husband.
Like hugging him?
Yeah.
Like chest to chest?
Oh, kind of, but whenever you try to hug my husband and he's in a pissy mood, he always pushes you.
Okay.
Mark then broke away from the fight and went into the bedroom. Sabrina followed minutes later to again try and reconcile with him, before noticing the gun and knife laying on the very same bed their 6-year-old daughter was sleeping in. After seeing the gun, she panicked and grabbed it, worried about what he was planning to use it for in his drunken state. The couple both stayed silent as she loaded it and cocked it back. Sabrina says she doesn't remember anything after that.
Where were you at when you shot him?
Some distance.
Still on the other side of the bed?
Yeah, on the other side of the bed, I guess.
Had he pointed the gun at you?
No, but I'm not stupid. My husband is strong.
Okay. So he didn't point the gun at you?
No.
Okay. How long, when you picked up the gun, did you point it at him?
Yeah.
You didn't say anything to him?
No.
He didn't say anything to you?
No, he didn't say anything to me until I shot him.
And then what did he say again?
Why did you do this? It was a very nice tone. He said it in a nice tone, like, what are you doing?
By the time you pick up the gun, rack it, and shoot him, I mean, is it minutes, seconds?
Probably minutes.
So you pick it up, you
Like
rack it,
minutes.
so you don't immediately just pick it up,
No.
rack it, and shoot.
No, I aimed
Okay.
it at him.
Did it wake your daughter up?
I don't remember any of that. It seemed like seconds. Milliseconds went by before the ambulance and stuff was there.
Well, luckily, her father was also brought in for questioning that same night and was able to give a detailed recount of the resulting scene.
And when you went in there, where was Sabrina?
She was back by the bed. Like I said, he had stumbled back in the little hallway right there by the closet sitting on the ground. You shot me. Like he was surprised. And,
Did you see a gun?
yeah,
Where did you see it?
Sabrina had it.
Had it.
Yeah, and I told her to put it down. I put it on the table, the kitchen table out in the front of the room. And then about that time, the police came.
The officers now have an accurate timeline of events, but are still yet to understand why Sabrina did what she did. Sure, there was a gun in front of her and Mark was fired up, but he'd not shown any intent to use the gun yet, and seemingly without thinking, she picked it up and shot him. So the detectives decide to dive deeper.
So for 2 minutes, or a couple minutes maybe, you're sitting there pointing the gun, you're intending to shoot him, and what's going through your head? What are you thinking about?
Why does this guy have to always be such an ass?
Okay.
Just why? Why?
Why?
Why? Why does everything have to be drama? And he says it's me, and it really isn't me. I'm like the most easygoing person. I will literally run his bath, and I will wash him, and he's gonna have bubbles, and he's gonna have baby oil, and I take care of him, and I give him little facials, and I shave his fucking head, and I do all those things for my husband. I do. I take care of that man. He gets extra special relaxation time, which that is just getting a blowjob. But I do that every damn night. And I'll be there for like a fucking hour. And I do this stuff every single day. He gets food, he gets bath, he gets that. I do everything. I clean everything. And I'm the one that works. And I do everything.
Remember, all of this was given in response to the simple question, what were you thinking when you shot him?
And right now, the only reason why he's working right now is because one of our dogs got fucking diabetes. And he got some money on his credit card that he wanted to pay off. So he took a job to go do that. That's what he did. So he can pay off his bills and his motorcycle that he bought. None of that had to do with me. It all has to do with him. But everything I do has to do with me and my family and him. I take care of everything. But let's say you were always sticking your hand down your wife's pants or whatever, trying to turn her on or doing whatever to turn her on, and she just always just walked away from you or just whatever. I'm telling you, you would get a little irritated.
Absolutely.
It's been evident throughout the entire interview that Sabrina has had some pent-up emotions from her time with Mark. But in this outburst, especially in the context of the question, it becomes glaringly obvious that these emotions have turned to resentment, as so happens when somebody holds on to hatred or disdain. From the detective's point of view, her disparaging remarks could just be seen as venting, something she'd obviously been needing to do for a long time. But this time, she all but gave them her reasoning as to why she pulled the trigger. The detectives had pretty much heard everything they needed to, and silently decided it was time to drop the biggest bombshell of the entire interview.
I want to make sure that I'm correct on all this real quick. You pulled the gun out, you pointed at him, you intended to shoot him, he didn't have anything in his hands. Is that all correct?
Yeah.
Sabrina, is that a yes, like yes?
Yeah, I guess. Yes, I guess that's what happened.
That's what you told us would happen.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I believe would have happened.
Sabrina, your husband's dead.
Really?
Yes, ma'am. Your husband died at the hospital.
You're lying, right?
No, ma'am.
We wouldn't lie about that.
No, it's not. He was okay.
Oh, he's not okay.
He's not dead. No, he's not dead.
Sabrina was subsequently arrested on the grounds of first-degree murder. As Detective Blair stated, she admitted that she intentionally shot her husband while he was unarmed, and while she was under no immediate threat, she also gave direct reasoning and stated everything she recounted was clear and factual. On top of all of that, none of the abuse that she'd cited had been reported, and the detectives believed it to be made up. But what if I were to tell you that Sabrina didn't end up serving a minute in jail? All the evidence she provided in the recorded interrogation does indeed point towards being an unprovoked, intentional attack on her husband, but there were other factors to take into account specifically pertaining to the interrogation itself. First of all, Sabrina was clearly traumatized, not only from the horrifying events of that evening, but also from 4 years of abusive marriage. Her father lived with the couple and was able to cite many incidents in which Mark was aggressive towards her. Secondly, Sabrina was obviously still very intoxicated in the interview. Laura even mentioned in her statement that Sabrina barely ever drinks, but was enjoying herself earlier that night and gotten quite carried away with how much she had. Sabrina's lawyers also mentioned how the detectives not being honest about her husband's condition was deceptive, and that the detectives took advantage of her fragile and vulnerable position to get what they wanted out of her. Had she had a lawyer with her, there's almost no chance the detectives would have reached the same conclusion. And so, when the case was brought to court, many people viewed the case with a different perspective. Experts in the field also told of the concept that many abuse victims don't come forward with their experiences, and instead keep it to themselves until it's too late. Sabrina was even observed to meet almost all of the criteria they'd look for in a typical abuse victim. Her statements also changed slightly once she conferred with a legal team. She told the court that after she picked up the gun, Mark approached her instead of silently standing standing still. In court, she also focused on 2 incidents in which Mark had choked her to the point of unconsciousness and swept her legs from out beneath her, causing serious injury to her head. After a long and controversial trial, the judge eventually came to the conclusion that Sabrina was an abuse victim, and as such was in reasonable fear of her husband that night and shot him out of self-defense. Sabrina Hendley was acquitted of all crimes and walked out of the courtroom a free woman.